This is not about a difference of political opinion. This is about just like basic humanity. And that's what these people don't get, because they have shown that, we knew that violence was expected on the 6th. We knew that violence was predicated on someone telling the lie, the big lie about our elections. We knew all of this in advance. We knew that violence was planned for the 6th. We knew that violence depended on the lie, on someone upholding the lie that our elections were fraudulent. Lies that Republican secretaries of state said were a lie. Republicans had said it was a lie. Republican governors had said it was a lie, etc. So we knew in advance that violence was planned. We knew that violence needed someone to tell the lie.
Her point there that we knew is borne out in every person that you talk to who was there. Congressman Himes told his staff to stay away. Congresswoman Sanchez told her husband where her will was. Other members have told me on the air that they wore sneakers so they could run away from someone if they had to. I mean, where are we? If they knew there would be violence, they knew it came from the lie, and Republicans have already decided that they won't convict Trump.
We have a lot further to go as a country, Nicole. You and I have talked on the show how many times about the risk of violence in those weeks after the election. And not just that, think of all the dehumanization of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez over the last couple of years. Not just from Trump, but from a lot of Republicans. And think of the impact that had on that mob. No wonder she feared for her life. These are human beings. And the speed with which a lot of Republicans in Congress want to treat like an insurrection against the Capitol, that, God forbid, the wrong person opened a door and AOC was there, do we have any doubt that they would have committed acts of violence against someone like her? Of course they would have. And the speed with which they're kind of falling back into the normal rhetoric of let's move on, as if we're discussing a government shutdown or some typical Washington debate, and not a violent insurrection that killed 5 people and could have killed a lot more, is completely and utterly outrageous. And where is the empathy from her Republican colleagues for the fear that she felt? Where is the concern about the fact that some of the same Republicans in the House caucus might have known about some of this in advance? I mean, this should be a reckoning for this country. And the fact that the Republican Party can't even bring it to agree, the President of the United States bringing that kind of violence on members of Congress is worthy of impeachment is completely unacceptable. And I think we cannot allow it to become normalized in American politics as just like another process story where some people are arguing we should move on and some people should argue we should impeach him. No, if you are an American and if you have any sense of empathy and decency towards somebody like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who was put up with threats and dehumanization online, we should be able to disagree without doing that to each other. And we're not going to be able to move forward as a country and do things together until we realize it.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.